Before we begin, please visit us on social media at Cold Call Lawcast. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Tell us what you think of our podcast or ask us a question. We're also on iTunes. Has anyone asked this question yet? I guess I don't really know. I don't know if that's true. We don't even have any hate mail. Send us hate mail. I want hate mail.
So welcome back to the Cold Call Lawcast. In the studios with us today is John Gordon, the Executive Director of the Minnesota ACLU. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So some quick background quickly on John. You grew up in Iowa. You graduated from Princeton University with your undergraduate, and then you went to law school at Harvard.
Yes, I did.
It's like everybody, right? Yeah. Who hasn't gone there, right? And then John clerked for the Honorable Lewis Morgan at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. After his clerkship, John practiced in the area of complex litigation at Faegre Baker Daniels, where he was a partner. You've tried more than 100 civil jury cases to conclusion. And he's also represented students harassed because of sexual orientation. He's represented victims of domestic violence, immigrants seeking asylum, and proponents of the common sense gun control. John is frequently retained as a mediator, and he is also an adjunct professor at the University of Minnesota Law School. And I hear you were also do some adjunct work at St. Thomas School of Law?
I've taught at both. I've had to give up my teaching, unfortunately, to take this job at the ACLU because it's pretty consuming, but I hope to get back to it someday.
Excellent.
That's okay. I'll fill in for you while you're gone.
Excellent.
Yeah, is there anything you don't do?
Yeah, I don't know how to fix an internal combustion engine.
Okay. That's too bad. We were just about to quiz you on that.
Well, that's one strike, but we got two more.
So with that, can you tell us a little bit more about, why you decided to go to law school in the first place and become a lawyer, and kind of your thought process in going to law school once you got out of Princeton?
Yeah. I had an undergraduate degree in public and international affairs, as it was called, basically a government major. And I decided that being a lawyer was a way to make a difference in people's lives, but also do it in a way that was intellectually stimulating and interesting. I think, frankly, I thought it was going to be more of an intellectual exercise than it turned out to be. Turns out the practice of law isn't all that intellectual most of the time. But basically working with people on problems and solving them.
Okay. And so getting to your role at the ACLU, so what is the ACLU for people who don't know, and specifically how does the local chapter, where you're the executive director, how does that help the Minnesotans?
The American Civil Liberties Union was formed almost 100 years ago, and since then has been the most prominent and, I think, successful protector of civil liberties of people in the United States. There is a chapter or an affiliate in every one of the 50 states, and each one of us is a separate organization under the banner of the ACLU. So we are all affiliates of the National ACLU, but the Minnesota affiliate, just like all the rest of them, has its own board of directors, its own books and records. We take the cases we want to take. We don't take the cases we don't want to take. We work with the national organization a lot and co-counsel with them, and they provide us with a lot of resources, and we provide them with our work and our intelligence in terms of what's going on in Minnesota, but we really are separate organizations. That's a fairly unusual structure. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of national organizations are set up with chapters in different places, but we really are separate organizations. In Minnesota, one of the advantages of having separate organizations is that we can stay focused on what we think is most important for the people of Minnesota,
right?
And trying to assure that we are in tune with the important issues here. What we're focused on now is criminal justice issues, immigration-related issues, racial justice, issues and in mass incarceration, which we're trying to do something about, and always free speech issues and general constitutional law issues.
Okay, excellent. And actually, what courses did you actually teach at the U of M? Not to backpedal a little bit, but now I'm kind of curious.
I taught the first course I taught was a course called Equal Justice Under Law, and it was a seminar that actually traveled among the 3 law schools. And the year I did it happened to be at the University of Minnesota, and so I taught that course. I taught a course in civil litigation, and then I taught a course in depositions.
Excellent.
Which was more interesting than it sounds, let me say.
Have you thought about teaching like a First Amendment law or any sort of constitutional law as well?
That's something I really would like to do at some point. We're very fortunate at the ACLU of Minnesota. We have a legal director who's been working in the trenches and immersed in constitutional law for 20 years now. Her name is Teresa Nelson, and she is a constitutional law rock star.
Wow.
So it would be presumptuous of me, I think, to try to hold myself out with the expertise that she's got.
Do you have a favorite amendment?
Oh, it's got to be the first. I realize that's a little predictable. I don't know what to say. It's like, there is the Third Amendment about quartering troops, but really it's a little hard to get excited about it.
Okay. Be a distant second then.
It's a distant second. The third is a distant second.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to just dive in and talk, open it up for a little bit of discussion amongst all of us, but specifically getting your opinion on some of the major topics that are really impacting us as students, but generally society in general.
Great.
So race in America, I wanted to start with this. So a 30-year-old Amber Geiger, she shot and killed Botham Shamjean, 26, a black man, after she thought she entered her own apartment, not realizing she was on the wrong floor of her building. That's what she had said when this happened on September 6th. There was a lot of news coverage about it. Some kind of recent events is that Amber Geiger, the police officer, she was actually charged with manslaughter in this shooting. But I guess what are your thoughts on that whole case? And do you think race really came into play about how kind of the series of events kind of unfolded?
It's pretty easy to jump into situations, particularly those that are far away or those that we don't have any facts about other than what we read about in the media. And while we're all tempted, and it is tempting, I think, for everybody to start forming opinions right away based on the media that you're listening to or the bubble that you happen to be in. I think it's something that we would all be better off if we could just resist some of that a little bit. What do we know about this case? It's some of the facts that you just recited, and I say this respectfully to you. I mean, maybe that's right and maybe it's not right.
Right.
And I think that people really should make sure that they have got enough facts from enough reliable sources. What the incident tells me is that it's another example of the wave of police violence that we are seeing in this country. It's an example of the fact that when everybody is armed to the teeth, and that guns are seen as the first resort instead of the last resort, you are going to get situations where people are hurt unnecessarily, where people are hurt unfairly, and where people are hurt based on their race or other characteristics. So that's not an opinion, I'm afraid, as to what happened in that individual case, but it sure is an indication that we are living in a situation that needs to be fixed in terms of the way that a lot of police officers and law enforcement officers interact with the populations that they are supposed to be serving.
And it seems like, and I mean, not just this case, but many other, we've kind of seen a string of cases that have come to light, I think mostly because social media now allows us to film things in real life. You talk about using the gun first. Do you think, how systematic do you think that is in our police force, where it's always, as soon as I think there's danger, I must draw my weapon?
Well, I think there's a lot of police training that involves encouraging police to take charge of a situation and to take charge of every person in a situation the minute they come upon it. And that is not always the right reaction. There is plenty of learning, and you can see videos of this too, where police have engaged in de-escalation tactics. There's a famous video where the police, with guns drawn, but not shooting, are following a guy down the street for minute after minute, and he's waving a knife and he's talking not a little, like crazy,
right?
If I can say that. And there are situations where I think a lot of cops would be trained to gun this guy down, and that's not what happened in this situation. And so I think that the video evidence, and you're right, there's so much more of it, and it's led to a lot of openness and a lot of very healthy discussions. But it can show us the contrast between situations in which there is an immediate resort to weapons and a situation in which people have been using their de-escalation training.
Right.
I just wanted to follow up. You mentioned making sure that you're getting information from a variety of reliable sources. And I found that to be a struggle, in the day and age of the internet and also having limited time as a law student. Do you have advice for people who might have limited time, who want to be informed and adequately informed?
It's really hard. You almost have a presumption in law school, or at least I recall having done that you've really got to be spending every waking moment trying to keep your head above water in torts or contracts or con law or whatever it is. It is healthier, if you can do it, to budget time. And I'm still actually a fan of print journalism. That is the black marks on the white paper, and it's folded up and it shows up on your doorstep in the morning.
You may recall
what was that again?
Yeah, right.
I've never. Marshall, have you heard
weird,
of that?
Huh?
Yeah, I'm just.
It's the olden days.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the reason I think is that whatever news organization you pick to rely on, and I think it should be a variety. I do a fair amount of reading on my computer, but also a fair amount of paper journalism, and I try to get a variety of viewpoints. And I find that sometimes that's uncomfortable. Sometimes it annoys me a great deal, but I still try at least to expose myself to views, even if I think that they're a little weird from time to time. If you can find a news outlet that you respect, to me, the arrangement of the stories on the page or the arrangement of the stories in a magazine, where they fit in, are they near the front, are they near the back, is it that column that you always see that's got stuff interesting? To me, that having some editor or publisher really be an intermediary between me and the raw news is, I think, a plus. I know that there is this great trend toward disintermediation, if I can. Don't ask me to spell that word, but basically having everybody going out and viewing nothing but raw data. And I think you're depriving yourself of an advantage if you are not taking advantage of people who really are professionals in the field of journalism and reporting and opinion writing, and trying to gobble it all down yourself. It's really too much. It's pretty much indigestible. I think one of the big problems we've had is that we've now got a president who, among very many other things, is really tearing down the profession of journalism as best he can, and encouraging people to disbelieve anything that anybody tells them that they don't already agree with. And I think that's tragic, and I think it's destructive. So whether you like the New York Times, or whether you like the Star Tribune, or whether you like the Atlantic Magazine, or the National Review, or the Wall Street Journal, or the New Republic, or Rolling Stone, or Mother Jones, or whatever it is, I believe that the profession of journalism is an honorable profession. Some people do it well, some people don't do it well. Okay, well, that's fine. That doesn't distinguish it from any other profession. But why would you not want to take advantage of people who've got some expertise in helping you digest this avalanche or this flood of data